Today we have Karen Burkett. She's one of our own. She's a graduate from 39.
Thank you, Tim.
I'm very proud of Karen. She was probably my first candidate on the Speakers Bureau, and she has, out on her own, done wildflowers on her own, researched, developed a program, and she's just now done houseplants. So I'm really excited to have her on my team. So I'm just going to turn you over to Karen, and welcome to Houseplants 101.
Awesome. Hi, guys. Well, it's perfect weather for this, that's for sure. All of you should have a plant and a handout in front of you. If you don't, I apologize, I made 23. I didn't expect this great turnout, so I appreciate you with the weather the way it is. And let me get my push button and we will get started. Couple of housekeeping tips. Oh, you get, okay. There's one more over here and I can get everybody all situated afterwards. So if you don't have one, let me know and I'll get you what I can, okay? All right. So a couple of things before we get started with housekeeping tips. I want you guys to know, how many of you think that just houseplants are succulents? 9 times out of 10 we walk in and we say we want a houseplant, and the first thing that comes to mind is succulents, and that's not the way it is. We have to kind of think out of the box on the succulents. I am not a big, have to confess, I'm not a big succulent fan, okay? I like plants that green and grow and do things. So, but these are just kind of some really kind of fun facts. The smell of soil increases your serotonin. That's kind of fun. Dirt under your fingernails promotes and improves your gut health. Gardening reduces symptoms of ADHD XYZ. Spending time in the garden decreases your anxiety and your depression. Growing plants increases your self-esteem, maybe. And then gardening promotes happiness and increases your quality of life. And I think that most of us know that because we are in the garden during the nice times of the year. But it's also really, really nice to have that in your house in the fall too, and then in the winter, especially when it gets cold like this, to be looking at something that's green and growing and amazing in your house. It also increases that, the happiness and quality of life. So we're going to do some good vibes. Again, just to let you know, houseplants are fairly new. How many of you think of hippy dippies when you think of houseplants? I'm one of those. I'm one of the end side of that, but I am a hippy dippy. So this is minimal. This is not my house. However, it's close. So first and foremost, housekeeping ideas. Make sure that you fill out that questionnaire from the beginning to the end. As you know, that's how we get monies and funding to be able to do lunch and learns and get out in the community and be able to provide information about gardening or other types of plant atmosphere. So make sure that you fill out that questionnaire and that we get it back. Please turn your phones to silent because I'm one of those ADHD XYZ people. It just is very distracting if your phone goes off in the middle because I'll start dancing. Jot down any questions. There'll be time at the end to answer them. I will answer as we go, but just kind of keep that in mind if you want to jot down a question, and then we'll have a question and answer time at the end. And then most importantly, take what you want and leave the rest. I am not by any means a complete expert on houseplants. This is Houseplants 101. I'm just getting into it and I'm learning. So by you asking me questions, if I don't know the answer, I will tell you this. I will be happy to go ahead and research it for you and get back with you. Okay, is that fair? So take what you want and leave the rest. One of the things that's really important is we do have a QR code for this. It'll be online, so if you need the presentation after I get done, you're more than welcome to go on Houseplants 101 on the QR code. I will have it again at the end of the presentation so that you can have that information. All right, we ready? All right, this is not my house either. But these are a few things that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about site and location, journaling, watering and feeding your house plants, because that's important, pest and disease and other challenges, replanting and planting, the containers that you want to use. And again, I'm not going to be talking a whole lot about succulents. I'm going to give you my 10 favorites for indoor houseplants that are easy, because my job is to give you the information, start you on your journey with houseplants or indoor planting, and then you can explore what works for you. But I'm going to give you 10 plants that are easy peasy, that not necessarily that you can neglect, but that you don't have to babysit a whole lot, okay? So again, your benefits of houseplant, the overall health in your house, because the houseplants will produce your oxygen in the house. So during this time where we have our windows closed and a lot of air is just recirculating, and it does allow you to have that extra benefits of health. Stress levels, I find personally that if I go ahead and I just sit with the woo-woo music on, yes, I'm one of those, I just enjoy being able to enjoy my plants for the regular day. Air quality, we talked about creativity, motivation, and happiness. And that's one of the things that's the best about this, is getting your hands dirty when it's comfortable in your kitchen and you're just planting and you're talking to the plant. Yes, I do. And so those are all things. And we talked about all of these wonderful benefits that it does. I love getting dirt under your fingernails because the gut health is just amazing. All right. So first and foremost, how many of you are here because you think houseplants are difficult? No? Nobody feels that they're difficult, challenging, dead on arrival? Nothing? Okay. So when you're picking out your plants and you're indoor planting, a lot of what you have to realize that this is a relationship you now have. You are going to see this plant every day because why? It's in your house. Okay? With the garden, we can go outside, we can look, see everything's okay, and walk away and kind of forget about it. This is now a relationship that you're building in your house.
Like
okay.
names?
I'm sorry?
Like names?
Like you can. You can. I name. And yes, they have a pronoun. They're he's and she's. There are he's and she's. All right. Every plant parent starts with just one little one. And the one that you have in front of you, I'm going to tell you about in a little bit. But this is Charlie. And Charlie comes from a very, very long line of amazing family members. The original parent or grandparent, I went to a Brownie Troop convention in 1972-ish. We picked up a very similar starting. And my mom has nurtured and loved that plant all along. And so when I went home 2 years ago when I bought my house, I picked up the grandparent or the grandchild and brought it home and propagated it. So you now have a grandchild. So that's where, ooh, I've got to go back. So that's where she comes from, or he comes from, depending on what you want to do with that. So this is where you're going to start your journey. It's going to go ahead and it's going to propagate, and you will start seeing the roots at the bottom. It's a fairly easy propagator, so at Christmas next year, if you want to go ahead and pass it on as a Christmas present, it's very easy to do. You do it about 2 weeks out, put it in a jar, or put it in a glass, and then just continue to go. But they're easy propagators. You need to anticipate where it's going to go. What kind of light is it going to have? How many of you know which way your windows face? Do they face east, west, south, north?
Everything but north.
Yeah. But where are your windows in your house? You want to pay attention to that because not everybody likes the invasive sun of the evening in the West. Not everybody likes the morning sun. And so this is where you're going to have to investigate in your house of where your plant's going to go. And that goes with the lighting. Are you going to put this in the center of your house where you have no lighting at all? What are you going to do with that at that point? Because you need to pay attention, okay? Temperature and humidity. Temperature right now in our houses are anywhere from 75 to 80 degrees, right? I mean, well, let's face fact. I know everybody's going, no, it's at 60 something. Okay, keep in mind, if you're not comfortable, the plant's not going to be comfortable either, okay? Humidity is a big deal. With all of the heaters right now and the air conditioners in the summertime, you're not going to have that level of humidity that maybe that plant needs. So pay attention to where you put it because if that vent is hitting directly on it, it's not going to survive. Okay? How big do you want this plant to get? This one is going to be a little, just a normal plant. Okay, I'm going to tell you that right now. It's not going to grow into a big old tree. But how many of you have picked up those ferns or those palms that are at the grocery store and they grow from here, they go, oh, it was a perfect thing for what my corner needed. And then all of a sudden it goes to here. Okay, so pay attention to what size things are going to give. How much care do you need to give? What kind of a plant parent are you? Are you a neglectful one? Or are you somebody that's over attentive and loving to water? Okay, you need to pay attention to that too. Budget, how much do you want to spend? Sometimes you can spend quite a bit on these home plants. So keeping it alive is important. You don't need to spend a lot, just kind of watch for it. Toxicity. How many of you have pets? Got to pay attention to where you put your plants. Okay, because the plant, 9 times out of 10, the cat will eat it. Okay, so you need to pay attention. And do you love it? So important. Because if you pick up a plant and you go, well, this one will be all right. No. Don't take it home because you will neglect it. Love it. Okay. It's all about love. All right. So pet-friendly plants, do your research. Make sure that you have a plant. And in 9 times out of 10 also, when you pick it up at HEB or any of the nurseries that are out there, it'll tell you what it is and how pet-friendly it is. If you really love the plant and you want it and it's not friendly to your dog or your kitty or your ferret, whatever you have, you want to make sure that you put it on a shelf and get it out of the way. And know that they're not going to climb up there and get it. So just make sure that it's pet friendly to a certain extent. I'm very fortunate. Bubba leaves all my stuff alone. All right, so you bring your new family home, choosing the right pot. These are very important. Terracotta, I personally, it's not the prettiest in the world, especially after you water for a while. But terracotta allows the plant to breathe. So when you water it, the terracotta will absorb the excess water and a lot of the minerals. That's why it gets that white stuff on the outside. And we'll talk about watering here in a minute too. But terracotta, I prefer. Like I said, it's not the prettiest. The best way to get around a terracotta plant, if you're looking for something pretty, is take the terracotta and put it in something pretty. Okay? That way you can have the decorator that you want, but you can actually have the plant propagate the way it needs to as it grows through. The ceramic is good too. Some of the plants that we pick up from the flea markets or whatever that have those beautiful Mexican pots, they're gorgeous, but just beware when you water that water isn't going to be absorbing out, so you may not need to water as much. Okay? All right. When and how to repot. So I've got a couple right now personally that I am delaying my repotting because I really like the way the plant looks right now. They still follow, even though they're inside, they still follow the same growth cycle that you have with your plants outside. So right now in the winter, I'm not going to repot any of my plants. I want to make sure that we have the spring or the late winter before I start repotting. So I have that option too, to allow them to go outside and enjoy the fresh air after I repot for a day or so where it's warm enough for them to do that. The roots are on the top of the bottom, so as you're planting and you're repotting, you want to make sure that if you have your roots on top, that maybe that plant, and do the research because each one is a little bit different. When you repot it and it has the roots on the top, it may like that. That's where houseplants are a little bit different. Remember that a lot of these are tropicals, and so they are undercarriage. So a lot of them live beneath the trees with the sheltered life, and they don't have to have much dirt on their feet. They may like the roots on the top so that they can do what they need to do naturally. So do your research on your plant when you do that. Soil drying out more quickly than usual. So if you plant something in the ground, obviously in a pot, it's going to get a little bit drier faster. But the easiest way, and what I find that I use on a regular basis, is just like if you're going to have a cake in the oven and you dip your stick in, right? When you pull it out, is it moist around the stick or is it a dry pull up, okay? So you want to make sure that you can do that. You can do that with your finger too. Just go down about a knuckle. You can go down 2 knuckles, sometimes they say, but if you go down a knuckle and you find that it's super dry, or if it's too wet, pay attention to that. Because if it's too wet and it's consistent like that, you're gonna make sure that you wanna go ahead and repot it because you don't wanna drown your little guy, okay? Yellowing leaves doesn't always mean that you are watering too much. Yellow leaves may be there's no nutrients in the soil. Yellow leaves may mean that you watered it on the leaf and it didn't like that. Okay, so again, do your research on what that particular plant does. Choose your soil wisely and drainage. So there's a lot of, you don't want to use a regular potting soil, and if you do, you want to make sure there's some vermiculites inside of it. That gives it the opportunity to drain properly when you're doing that. You can use the core if you want to use core if it requires a drier soil. I typically use the cactus soil in my house. And that way I know that it's going to be draining properly and that it's getting the nutrients that it needs. I haven't gotten to the point where I'm building my own soil and making all that happen, okay? So cocoa chips, cocoa peat, orchid bark, perlite, pumice, and always keep some vermiculite on hand. If you use your regular potting soil, make sure that you have a handful to every pot full of the vermiculite in there so that it can go ahead and drain properly. Okay, so soil purposes, this is kind of just basic knowledge. Use and protect a plant's roots, of course. Keep your plant anchored and upright. This gets to be very important with these tropical plants. Don't transplant too early, okay? You want to make sure that when you plant this little guy right here, and he has all of his beautiful yellow roots that you'll see, that you get him in there so that the roots are all under the soil. So it has something to grasp onto so that it can do and flourish the way it needs to. It gives you a nutritious medium. We'll talk about fertilizing here in a minute. Help convey air and water to the plants and roots. Provide a rich ecosystem for it to thrive on. This is nothing that you guys don't know from gardening outside. Okay? It's all basically the same information, but you're dealing with a different type of plant, one that's not going to tolerate the weather quite as well as we would like it to. Okay? And then, of course, it's going to have your microbes and your mycelium. It's going to build those same little critters in there, so that we don't want to destroy those when we repot. We want to make sure that all those little microbes stay together so that they can continue to do what they need to do for the plant. All right, so this is, I know this is hard to see from a distance, and it is in the QR code, so you can kind of take a look at that. But it gives you some different lighting instructions. So when you look on that label of that indoor plant that you're picking up that you love so much and that you're going to give a name to and put it in the proper window, you know what proper window you're going to be putting it in. So that's kind of how that works. All right. So bottom to top, top to bottom, whatever you want to do with your watering. I recommend setting yourself a schedule. I have a Zen schedule. Every Sunday morning I go to church with my plants. I walk around and stick my finger in, make sure that they're all properly wetted. If they're not, then we go ahead and we water. We go through that. Watering from the bottom is very tricky. If the plant says that it can, what I recommend is at the bottom of the plant where you have your hole that comes out, when you transplant it, take a piece of cotton macrame, because I know you guys will all have the macrame cord in your yard, but take a piece of cotton string, a fairly thick one, plant it put it in the bottom where your hole is, and then plant your plant. But make sure that that string sticks out. Okay? And so what that string is going to do is that string is going to go ahead and absorb the water and continue to water the roots from the bottom. Okay? It's a cheater way to do the bottom rather than depending on it to go through the hole. And we're going to talk a minute about that too. But that's one way to water from the bottom. So then you would put the water in the saucer and it would automatically go through the bottom of the plant. Now, this gets really tricky because when you are watering plants, not all plants like to be watered like this. So as you water your indoor plants, make sure that there is no water left in the saucer after you get done watering, because you don't want to potentially have root rot of some sort. You don't want the chemicals from the water to go back up into the plant if they've dripped through, because it will be intense. Okay? So with that being said, it's probably better if you have distilled water in your house for your house plants. You're going to find that we don't necessarily know what's in our drinking water that's coming out of the sink. And with all of the chemicals and all of the things that they add to make our water drinkable, we want to make sure that it's as fresh for the plants indoors. It's going to also eliminate some of your bug problems down as we go. Okay? So this is my little house plant watering thing. And Dollar Tree. I fill it up and then I just go through and make sure that I need to water. I do not fully water all the way through because I have a schedule with my plants. Okay? If you're going to water it all the way through, I suggest you take it, you go to the sink, you pour in the water, let it drain all the way, and then put it back where it belongs. And that way you know that it gets all the way through, but make sure that it's drained all the way through so that once it sits on that saucer, you're not having but just a little bit at the bottom that's draining out. Okay, so nothing's sitting. Yes, sir?
I put gravel on the bottom of my saucer so it doesn't actually go back up into the plant.
That's an excellent idea, just so it's not sitting in the water. So what he said was he puts gravel in the bottom of his drainage area. So you can get some pea gravel, fairly cheap, put it on the bottom, and set your plant on top of that too. Okay? All right. So again, you're going to water soil. Do not water the leaves. Very important. I know that we get carried away sometimes and we just go ahead and go all over and whatever. No, we want to make sure that it's at the bottom. Again, with the distilled water, it allows you to have a tempered water. So you're not getting not too hot. Most of these plants, again, like I said, are tropical, so they do not like hot water and they do not like cold water. So your room temperature water is good. If I use water out of the sink, I typically go ahead and have an old milk jug that I keep in my pantry, and then I go ahead and I water with that and then just refill it and let it sit, because a lot of those chemicals will end up dissolving or humidifying out. But in a pinch, you can sure go ahead and use the tempered water, but do not use hot, do not use cold. Make it lukewarm. Again, with the tap water, some houseplants are sensitive to it. If you notice that they're starting to get those brown leaves, pay attention. Maybe it's the water you're using, so that's an easy change out if you haven't gone in. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else. But anyway, this is on your QR code, so we were good there. What's in a name? I am not good with all of the Latin names that come here. I typically know peace plant. Immediately you know where I'm going with that one, right? There's a polka dotted begonia that I love. The interesting thing about your scientific names are the thought process of you want that specific plant. Okay? I don't want a deviation of the pathos. I want that one that Auntie Suzette had in her cabinet or wherever, okay? So either you propagate and you steal from her, okay? You clip off, put it in some water, watch it propagate. Or you actually get the scientific name for that specific plant. And that's kind of what all this is. Spider plants and I'm trying to see, ZZ plants. Let's see, what else? Snake plant. All of those have individual names. If you've ever seen the mother-in-law's tongue or the snake plant, they're very different. And if you're looking for the big long one that has the dark leaves, if you go with the wrong scientific name, you're going to end up with the yellow one that's short. So depending on what you want your mother-in-law to think, might make an impact. All right. This is something that's really fun and easy, and we can all benefit from it in the spring. Start your herb garden in your windowsill. Very, very simple, easy way to start that house planting. So if you go ahead, just make sure that you have the right window, right? It's got to be the afternoon window so that it has enough sun, or that we're going to have enough lighting on it. So very, very easy to do. As you can see, just regular pots. Plant your herbs that you want to have in your kitchen and just let them go. And as you know, most of our herbs are fairly easy to grow, right? They take over our garden if we're not careful. So go ahead and start by having houseplants this way. And what a great way to be successful, right? To have something that not only are you going to have in the wintertime, but then you come to your spring garden and guess what? You get to transplant them out there and let them enjoy. So it's kind of a fun way, especially if you have kids also, because the kids can take part in that, or grandkids, or whatever that looks like. All right, so top 10 successful, to be successful, that's my job, is to help you be a successful houseplant owner. So we're going to talk a little bit about all of these different ones. The aloe vera, the creeping Charlie, the philodendron, the golden pothos, inch plant, snake plant, peace lily, peperonia is one of my favorites, ZZ, and then the polka dot begonia. So first we're going to talk about aloe. What does aloe need? Y'all know. Not much, but it also needs sun, right? This is not a plant that you're going to put in the center of your house by your television set that's not going to get any sunshine. Okay, it needs to be on a west-facing window, or at least gets your sun 6 hours a day. All right? Creeping Charlie, which is who I've given you, and very easy plant to grow, but again, it likes the sunshine. So let's talk about that for a minute while we're here. You've got two plants that love sun. You have no west-facing window. If you have a west-facing window, the window maybe, I don't know, gets 3 hours, 4 hours in the afternoon. That's not going to cut it, right? So they're not going to like it. So one of the things that I've done in my house, which is kind of crazy, but I am who I am, all of my lamps in my house now have the plant lights. There's two different ones. One is flower and fruit. The other one is seeding. Either one. But I've changed out all of my lamps in my house to go ahead and have the plant lights. They're not red, they're not blue, they're traditional lights. You can read by them, it's not a big deal. Nobody knows it unless you tell them. They're a lot more expensive than a regular light bulb. But the nice part about it is that they give your plant light where it doesn't have light. And I have mine, all my plants are nocturnal. So all of my plants get 6 to 8 hours of light on a timer. So when my light goes on in my living room, that's when they get their light. And it gives them the consistent light that they need, even if they're in a window that gets partial light.
Because I got those and it said like the plant had to be like 15 inches by the light.
Not so much with indoor plants, because indoor plants, again, remember that they're undercarriage. So they're okay with filtered light.
That on the box right there, 15 inches,
You mean 15 inches away from it?
that it needed to be like 15 inches under that light for it to benefit.
I don't know about 15 inches. I know that,
I have the same idea, I was just gonna put them in my lamps.
yeah. You have to have the plant, they have to be near it. Like I have a table like this, and I have one lamp that stands about this tall, and I have the whole thing filled with plants. And they get enough light from that to benefit. Now, they're not going to benefit if the plant is on the other side of the room. I mean, you have to have them within proximity. I don't know necessarily, they need to be right underneath it. Because all they're doing is they're just getting the light, the gradual light from all the way across. So all of my lamps, I don't have a picture in here of mine, but all of my lamps are the candlestick lamps. And they have just a white, I typically have white or off-white lampshades, and all of my plants are underneath. And I have them sitting up so that it is like sun coming down.
When I have plants, I have lights where it's dark.
Yeah.
And I don't have my plants necessarily where it's dark, so I didn't think it was gonna do.
Yeah, I am amazed because the one place that I have them,
So it would grow in my bathroom, but I thought, well, 15 inches, that's not gonna help anything.
yeah, no, I don't think if you put them, I'd hate to say no in the bathroom, but it couldn't hurt. I mean, you can try it. I would think with the ferns and with the pothos, they would benefit. I think they would actually do really well if you put them in the bathroom. because you're in the bathroom, maybe not 6 hours, but you can do it. Yes, sir?
My house has a eastern facing backyard. Most houses in my place have eastern facing backyards, and they have a garden bathroom with a big window in it on the east side. So the east side here is a lot more light than the west side does on the road.
Yeah, the east side,
Coming into that window, and that's where I keep a lot of my plants, in the bathtub, because I shower.
yeah. We'll talk about that in a minute too.
It also keeps humidity.
All right. We're going to continue on with our 10 successful houseplants. So this is a philodendron. They're fairly easy. They are temperamental when it comes to the watering. They need a little bit moister soil as it goes. But as you water them, what I like to do, again, is leave them in the little plant until they can't fit their little feet in there anymore, and put it into another plant pot or a plant home that maybe doesn't have a hole on the bottom, so that it can go ahead and keep its feet moist. You have to watch, because you don't want them too moist, right? You don't want them to water out. Golden pothos, the plant that keeps on giving and never dies. They do get leggy, so as they start getting their little arms, I guess is what we're going to call them, when they get their runners, thank you. When they get their runners, clip them off. And you can always either transplant them back into a hole that you may have in the pot, or go ahead and put them in a jar, give them as a gift, or put them someplace else. But as the runners, you're going to find that way it will go ahead and continue to give in the center by pulling your runners.
Karen,
Yes, ma'am.
or sell them at the plant center.
Or sell them at the plant sale. I got to add that in.
I did that last year, and they also, they're very costly.
Yeah, they're so easy. They really are. You can neglect them. You don't have to pay attention. Yes, sir.
If you have your water living root system, and you have a drainage hole, what I do is I have a lot of old terracotta pots that are broken up. I just put the terracotta broken in the bottom, which will absorb the water and release it slower.
Nice. Okay. All right. So the next one is an inch plant, or some of you may know it as a wandering Jew. It actually is very easy. This is one that you can grow underneath your oak trees outside, and it won't affect it. Even this winter, that thing that we have, it dies and comes back with a vengeance. So this is another one that's easy propagating. Again, your snake plant, mother-in-law, tongue, moonshine, I've never heard it called. But so again, these have variations. So make sure that whatever you want to get as far as the snake plant is concerned, that you get what you get. Because I have one and it's got super, super dark leaves and it's tall like that. So just kind of pay attention in what you got. Peace lilies. The sad and unfortunate truth is we usually get them when we have deaths in the family or family life. So these are drama queens. They're amazing. I can't tell you how much I love this plant. This plant is so much of a drama queen that you can neglect it. And then she goes, oh, I'm so thirsty. And then you take her and you drain the water all the way through her, and within 30 minutes, hi, I'm back. But they are amazing. They are just so much fun. Yeah, these are, yeah. I brought a couple home. As most of you know, I used to work at Tractor Supply in the nursery center there. And we had a couple that were like giving out. And so I went ahead and I brought them home and I cut them all down and I said, okay, let's go. And they're both coming back more beautiful than they were when they originally came in on the truck. So it was kind of fun. Yes, ma'am.
With the peace lily, what's the trick to getting that bright white versus like the when
That's your flower, even though it's not really a flower, it's actually a leaf. It's proper lighting, it's proper dirt, proper fertilizing, and an occasional prayer. I haven't found the trick yet. But when they do come up, they are gorgeous, but getting him to do it, unless you're a nursery, I haven't figured it out just yet. But when I do, I will let you know.
She like water a lot, because I've had a peace lily that was gifted to me that just did amazing, but
You couldn't get the white.
I had to give her away when I moved, and when I bought one for myself, I could not make it work.
Yeah. It's all about lighting, and you just kind of got to get used to the pretty leaves, because when you actually get the flowering portion of it, it just happens to do what it needs to do with the proper temperature. It's just kind of,
a lot of people do not want that flower.
yeah,
They want only the green, because once that flower goes through its stage and releases everything, then you've got to keep
then it's saying goodnight.
cleaning the leaves up and the tabletops underneath and everything else.
That's true too. All right, and then we've got, this is a peperonia, even though it's way over here and I didn't notice that, but she's really cute. She's very temperamental. She gets leggy though if you move her out of her original pot. She likes to be tight. So just when you're ready to transplant her, make sure that she has all of her roots all together, and then put her into a little bit bigger pot, not the 2 inches on the side. This is the ZZ. I have had more fun with this because it is, the one I have is black. And the new shoots come out and they are a neon green. And they're so easy, and they just don't require anything. I like it because it reminds me of ZZ Top, kind of funny. But that's exactly what it does. And then I also have a polka dotted begonia. And these are deceitful because they look like they're sick. When you look at the leaves coming out and they all have the little polka dots, they're not a true white. They're actually a kind of a silver. But they are amazing, and they just kind of keep growing top. And I haven't transplanted her yet, and I'm kind of scared too because I don't want her to die. All right, so we talked about watering. Do not overwater. They will tell you when they need water, and that's when you got to really watch. If you're overwatering, they may turn yellow around the edges. You may be underwatering, and it may turn yellow around the edges. So there's a perfect balance in there. Just like any relationship, you got to pay attention to it. All right? All right, shower with your plants. Do not be afraid to put them in your bathroom and turn your water on and let the humidity get to them. It's not a bad thing to go ahead and do that. Your family may think you're nuts when you put everybody inside the bathroom and you turn the heater on and turn all of that on there. But again, remember where they're coming from. They're tropical. They're under the carriage, right? So they like all of that moisture and that humidity. But that's where they came from. So it's okay. All right, pests and diseases. Fruit flies. Yay, my favorite. Aphids, fungus gnats, muleys, all of those things. Just like outside, you got to pay attention. You got to pay attention. The minute you see one, you know that there's a bunch. Okay? If you determine which plant it's coming from, segregate that plant. Move it. Okay? Because you don't want it to get into the soil of the other plants if it's not already there. So make sure that you go ahead and you move that plant out until you figure out. Couple of tips. Hydrogen peroxide and your yellow stickies. I gave you a yellow sticky. These are really easy to use. You pull them off, and then you just stick it into your plant. It collects all the little gnats, flies, whatever happens to be coming out of there, and that gives you a good indication of what you may have in your soil if you start seeing it. So then you can know how to treat. One of the things that I found, because I was having such a horrible infestation in the spring, I don't know where it came from, but it was there. I had those little flies, little bugs everywhere. And so I put this in to see where they were coming from. Good. Indication, know that they're there. How am I going to fix it? I did some research and found that making sure that I had hydrogen peroxide available to me at any given time was amazing to the soil. It does nothing to the soil as far as inhabiting and giving anything to the soil that it doesn't already have. What it does is it kills these little creatures. So I water with the hydrogen peroxide once I start seeing them. And I just do it on the outside. I don't do it at the base of the plant. So your plant's here, right? You want to go out about an inch and just water all the way around with the hydrogen peroxide. Not enough to drain all the way through, but just enough to get into the soil so that it kills those little creatures. Yes?
Do you use it full strength or do you dilute it?
No, I use it full strength. If you're not comfortable, you can dilute it, but realize that your response isn't going to be as intense. You're going to probably have to do it more often. But I take a little cupful, go around it. And it is amazing that within 2 to 3 days, all of a sudden you notice. And you will see the soil bubble. Okay, it's just like a wound, just like normal, where you'll see that little bubbling of the oxygen coming to the surface. But the hydrogen peroxide is amazing. An easy fix to a semi-easy fix to that before you put on your fungicide or any other type of, creature killers. And then again, your yellow stickies, I keep mine in year round, whether I have a problem or not, just to kind of keep an eye on what's coming, what's not coming, all of that. Yes, ma'am?
Okay, is your yellow sticky only diagnostic?
Yeah, it doesn't cure the problem. They get to it and they get stuck on it and they don't come back.
Where do you find them at?
You can buy them on Amazon and they come in major packs.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
They're also great, if you have a fruit bowl in your kitchen, put one on the top of your fruit bowl and it'll catch gnats if you get gnats in your kitchen.
I have one by my sink. I have one by my sink just in case, just to see, because if there's something fly around, I want to know it before I have to. So it's just, and they don't bother, they don't smell, they don't do anything. It's just, and they get mosquitoes too. All right. So we've covered quite a few things. Like I said, this is Houseplants 101. I'm still learning, and I'm increasingly learning more. But this is just kind of a basic to get your feet wet. And to learn a little bit about it. We talked about plants to discover. Take the easy way out. Do the easy plants first. And then as you grow, you can go ahead and expand your knowledge. But I will tell you, this is an addiction. Once you start, it's horrible because they grow in your house and you don't know where you're going to put them anymore. And then site and location. Take the evaluation of your house and where you're going to go ahead and put those plants, because you don't want to be unsuccessful. You want to be successful, and you don't want your little creature to die. Water and feed. Feeding is, you want to make sure that when you fertilize that you're careful. So feeding and watering, do those things just like we do in the garden. It's not any different. Do your research on your plants before you do it, just like we do. Pest and disease and other challenges. Of course, we're going to talk about fungus at a later time. We're going to talk about all those other things, but let's talk about what we can control right now, which are the little creatures that come with planting in the household. and then planting, and then containers. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
I had a question about the ZZ plant.
Mhm.
I have the black one as well. But it only put on 2 new shoots last year, and it's like, what do I
Light.
like?
Where I have mine, I have a plant, I have a lamp, and it's on the end, and it really likes the filtered light. So try adding light to it or moving it somewhere else. Maybe it doesn't like where you have it. Yes.
With your light in the house, do you walk your plant, move them, have to,
I turn them because I turn them because I don't like them going like this. So I go through when I water every time I water, and like I said, I do mine. I've gotten a habit. Summer Rain Oaks, who I got my certification through. She's online. She is really amazing. She's got tons of YouTube videos out there, so you don't need to pay for the course to see her work. She is amazing. She's out of the New York area. But she kind of set me up for having my church on Sunday mornings to do that. And every time I go through and I water, I'm rotating so that the whole plant gets the light. Because when she talks about watering also, you're going to water around the plant. You're not going to necessarily water to the root and right on the base.
and your name again, please?
Summer Rain Oaks. Yeah. She's amazing. She's incredible. And she knows a lot about bugs. Summer Rain, Rayne, Oaks with an E.
That's what I think that's their number, that'd be easier.
Yeah. And she's, yeah. Summer. All right. And then the other thing that I pick up occasionally, I'll see houseplant books or houseplant magazines just to get more knowledge and understand. So don't be afraid to pick up something. Again, take what you want, leave the rest. But it gives you some basics. Sometimes it gives me plants that I wouldn't necessarily think of how to or what to plant where. So just kind of keep your eyes open. There's plenty of information out there. I will tell you on YouTube and whatnot, be careful about when you listen to people about houseplants, because they're not always going to tell you the truth. I've noticed that as I've gone through this, and it's not that by any means that I am the be-all, end-all, but it does allow you to go in with an eye open when you're watching on YouTube, because so many people will get on there and say they're Houseplants 101, and as you listen to them, you know that they really just pulled the plant off the shelf and brought it home, and they're now experts. So just kind of go in with eyes open, because it's a different world. As you know, gardening is a different world. You know who's out there doing the raised bed gardening correctly, and then you go out there and you see that somebody has just taken it on. And so just be eyes wide open when it comes to houseplants. Keep your bugs down and your lights on. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Your feeding schedule for the plants, like
Quarterly.
quarterly, what do you feed them with?
They have indoor plant food. Medina puts out a pretty decent one, but you have to go to the nurseries for that. They don't have those in the big box stores on a regular basis.
And is that like a little liquid you put in water?
Yeah, they have the liquid and the granules. As we're starting this world, I suggest the liquid because it's a little bit easier to control as how much you put in. Granules, I am not comfortable with granules at all because I feel like I can burn them very easily. Yes, ma'am.
I was looking at an old houseplant book, and it was talking about putting plants in containers, like people like to put them in teacups or things that don't have the drainage holes. And so it said something about using, the gravel.
Uh-huh.
But what really struck me was it said on top of that gravel, you put charcoal, and then you put the soil. And I'm like, what's the purpose of the charcoal?
Absorbs the water. It's very, very similar to vermiculite. It's kind of the volcanic ash. And so it absorbs the water a little bit better. If you put things in teacups or things that do not have holes on the bottom, you're going to water a lot less. So, you know, so just be aware of that. A watering tip that's real easy, that hints from Heloise, use ice cubes. Use ice cubes. If you use ice cubes, it moistures the soil, but it doesn't drain all the way through. So like with your, for instance, poinsettias, 5 ice cubes a day during the whole season will keep your poinsettia where it needs to be. Okay? So with the ice cubes, those are easy. You can just drop an ice cube every other day and it'll keep the soil moist enough, especially if it absorbs it. But again, you have to be careful and pay attention, be attentive to when you have no hole at the bottom, because you're going to need to make sure that moisture is not too much, because you're going to end up transplanting it out of that little cute teacup faster than you can think of. Yes, sir?
How many people have a water softener?
Ooh.
How many people use?
Time to use distilled water.
Use sodium. Regular salt.
Yeah.
You know, water softener. You know, all that
Yeah.
sodium goes into when you're watering your plants.
Yeah, no, don't.
You know, so.
Well, and a lot of times that's what you'll see on the outside of your terracotta.
Yeah.
Your terracotta will absorb out, and then the only thing that you're going to see when this terracotta dries is that salt residue. That's what that buildup is on the outside of your terracotta. And personally, that's kind of like why I like using the terracotta, is because it does pull those minerals away from my plant and puts the water back into it where it needs to go.
You know, like, the pothos, I don't think they like the terracotta, they don't like to touch the terracotta around the top, they get, like,
The pothos?
yeah, or, you know, like, some of the plants don't, when they get salty like that, it's not.
Yeah. You don't ever, if you're transplanting into a terracotta pot, if you're transplanting into any pot, you want to make sure that you have at least 1 inch to 2 inches from where you have the plant to where your edge of the pot is. Because you want, if you're transplanting it or you're putting into a bigger pot, you want to make sure that it has enough room to grow. If you're transplanting into a pot that's going to fit, it'd be like me taking this coffee cup, transplanting the plant back into the coffee pot.
When they spill over, they don't like touching the salty ground.
Usually by that time though, if they're big enough to do that where they're touching over, I've never noticed that. I've never noticed that they don't like to touch the pot. But again, I'm usually transplanting way before that. Yeah. I haven't personally noticed that. I'm not saying that that's not something that happens, but definitely, I mean, and again, being aware of what's going on with the plant. Pay attention to, if it doesn't like it, then it's time to either transplant it into a plastic plant or do, you know, or pinch it around. Maybe clip it so that when it drapes over, it's not draping necessarily right onto the pot. Anything else? All right. Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate you. There's the QR code if you need it, so I don't have to go all the way.